Inside this episode, Defense Resource Management Institute turns 50, putting energy efficiency at the center of expeditionary operations.
This is about operational reach. It's about combat sustainability.
And a special interview with Army Major Dennis D.J. Skelton.
Our human nature is we respond to what we see, right? And we respond to visible weapons.
Behind me is Halligan Hall, home of DERMI, Defense Resource Management Institute. This year, DERMI turns 50, and to honor this occasion, we look to see how DERMI strengthens us and our allies.
Is 150, and for 15 bays is how much?
250.
250, okay.
Folks in the Department of Defense are really clamoring for more information, and so they are looking to us to continue to help them understand, how do I do something better? Managing government resources is never easy because there's so many things that you have to do because of legal or budget or other considerations that just don't happen in the private sector.
For those of us on faculty here that teach, we always get a lot of great experience working with various U.S. and international students. We cover all the services here in the U.S., as well as other DoD agency personnel, and then all the international countries and partner nations represented that send folks here. Really provides a great cultural learning environment for us, for them, the interaction.
We're able to interact with admirals and generals, and that was something I never expected coming out of graduate school, to be able to do stuff like that. DERMI is very unique. It's much different than really any academic institution I've ever been involved with.
At the senior level, we have folks who are things like the Surgeon General of Canada, who was our student 2 years ago in our senior course. The King of Jordan was our student. We've also had 2 former kings of other countries, many chiefs of staff, number of deputy directors or deputy ministers. Most recently, this summer, we had the Deputy Minister of Administration for Liberia. So we've had a number of folks whose political, economic, and other influence would be fairly large, particularly in their own countries, but also as part of the U.S. Security Cooperation Mission. These are opportunities for the U.S. and for students from other countries to work together and to have contacts when they go back to their more influential positions, to have somebody to pick up the phone and call or talk to, and we hope do a better job of getting along in the world. In residence, DERMI offers 3 main courses. We offer the Defense Resources Management course, which is a 4-week course for U.S. and international participants, and that covers the main points of the planning, programming, and budgeting system, not U.S., but a generic type system in which we think about better ways to make resource allocation decisions. We also offer a 10-week International Defense Management course for international students. We have an occasional U.S. student, but generally they're all international. This is an expanded version of the 4-week course that fills out some of the material on things like human resources and logistics in order to give internationals a little bit more time practicing and talking about some of the concepts. And then once a year, we have the Senior International Defense Management class, which is a flag and equivalent senior civilian level course. This is a more strategic level look at resource allocation. We also offer 1-week and 2-week courses domestic and specialized topics. We have 4 or 5 active duty faculty, a number of people who served in the military who are now lecturers or senior lecturers. Also have civilians who serve in those roles. And then we have academic PhD faculty, and each of these groups brings something different to DERMI, something valuable that helps us have a culture where I think what we bring is the best of academics, the best of current operations, and the best of sort of practical professional knowledge.
It's a very interesting teaching and learning environment for us and the students. We go back and forth from giving a standard, lecture in front of all the students for about a 45-minute period, and then we go into smaller discussion groups where we get to break down and actually work with the students more hands-on, analyzing the type of material we just taught in the lecture in problems and case studies, so they get the chance to actually work through what we taught them in lecture. So it's very unique, and I really enjoy the opportunity to get in front of and work with them and see them really grasp the concept concepts and actually, as I like to say, get it over that discussion period, the concepts we taught in the previous lecture.
We're a close-knit community here. The relationship in the classroom builds upon that, and so it isn't just the time here. A lot of times I'll have them contact me even after classes are done.
As long as I think anybody remember, we have gone to locations in the U.S. and out, mostly out, as part of the Defense Security Cooperation programs that the United States offers to teach anything from a 2 or 3 day workshop to a 2-week mobile international defense management course. This generally is to foreign nationals. Sometimes it's regional, often it's just country specific. And it can be anywhere from 20 to 40 plus students who come in to get a very concentrated experience in defense resources management.
I've definitely had a few mobile courses under my belt. This past year I went to Jordan. I've been to Malaysia a couple of times, Armenia a couple of times.
I was able to go to Honduras and teach for a week there. We're in Kosovo in Europe. At Fort Benning, actually, at the Western Hemisphere's Institute for Security Cooperation, which focuses on teaching Central and South American countries. Challenging part of that is all those are taught in other languages, so we end up having to do a lot of translations, the use of interpreters, because most of us don't speak the language that we're actually teaching in, so that actually adds a challenging dynamic to the instruction and getting points across. But that said, it's a very unique opportunity, and you can see the impact that we have in a lot of these countries.
To be able to interact with the people, even when you're not in the classroom, being able to just take in their culture and experience things that you never had before, and then to help build relationships with their military and show them the best practices to use to help them build up their DoD infrastructure or program. We're really building friendships with a lot of these peoples. That goes a long way. It's hard to measure that, but I think that's really important.
You must do it this way, or in the U.S. we suggest this. That's not what we do. We talk about how you could do things better and what might work in different situations. So I think culturally we are very open, we are very American in the sense that we're casual and we're willing to talk about things as colleagues so that we can talk to each other about the ideas that we want to explore.
When we return, E3O, Energy Efficient Expeditionary Operations. Stay in the loop with Naval Postgraduate School. Subscribe to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages for regular updates. Find out more information about Naval Postgraduate School at our website, www.nps.edu.
Going green or being energy efficient is an easier task when you're ashore or aboard ship. It's not so easy when you're at a forward operating base, far from home, under rough conditions. NPS's Energy Academic Group is working to reduce that difficulty. They gathered experts from the private sector, academia, and the armed forces to our Monterey campus, all in an effort to develop a curriculum putting energy front and center in the planning stages.
This is called the Energy Efficient Outpost Modeling Program, EEOMC, in a partnership between the Office of Naval Research and the Office of Secretary of Defense and the Naval Postgraduate School. We're working on ways to make outposts energy efficient. And NPS, because of its deep background in creating intellectual capital in the educational arena, is putting together the educational component of this EEOMC project. We expect to roll out the first increment of educational classes in about 6 months, but we wanted to run a dress rehearsal. So we've brought in 40 people from around the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, who are interested in energy efficient outposts. That is HVAC and laundry and all those other things that suck up energy on a FOB, on a forward operating base. We're presenting to them what we've put together, and they're going to tell us whether we're on target or whether we've made a hash of it.
And when you're making comments about whether something's good, bad, or indifferent, it has to be tagged to whether it's the 1, 2, or 3 day class.
One of the challenges we always face when we're setting up a base sort of far from our established supply lines is how to keep that base supplied with energy, with fuel. One of the challenges we really had in the past in both Iraq and Afghanistan was the cost of getting fuel all the way to the forward operating bases. When I say cost, I'm talking about costs in lives as well as costs in dollars. A lot of the lives we lost there were in protection of the fuel convoys. So, it's very important then to be efficient and effective with the fuel that we use at those forward operating bases. The current paradigm is to set up one tent, one generator. When we do that, it's very inefficient. So you have a lot of times the generator running at very low speeds, which is bad for the generator. It requires more frequent maintenance, more frequent replacement, and we're wasting a lot of fuel doing that. So when you look at the high cost of the fuel, we just can't do that anymore. We have new technologies now like solar and wind that are viable. We have smart grids we can enable to make these bases more effective and efficient. And we want to look at those technologies and enable the warfighter to be more effective when we're setting up contingency bases.
This is not a matter of helping the comptroller save money, and it's not about making environmentalists happy and saving fuel. This is about operational reach. It's about combat sustainability. It's about not having to call forward logistical resupply trains when the fuel or the water runs out. We want the efficiency to serve the effectiveness by allowing people to stay out longer, to do more. Imagine taking 10 pounds of batteries out of a Marine's backpack and then replacing them with M16 cartridges. Now the Marine is more durable. Now he's more lethal. Now he's more of a Marine. So if we could have rechargeable batteries, for example, and they do, this is a matter of efficiency serving the purposes of effectiveness.
After the break, a special interview with Army Major Dennis D.J. Skelton. Stay in the loop with Naval Postgraduate School. Subscribe to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages for regular updates. Find out more information about Naval Postgraduate School at our website, www.nps.edu. In the next segment, we meet with Army Major Dennis D.J. Skelton.
Our human nature is we respond to what we see, right? And we respond to visible wounds, right? That's why if you're wounded, being an amputee is a lot sexier for the photograph than being someone that has an invisible wound, right? Such as TBI or post-traumatic stress. And so it's been fascinating for almost a decade now belonging to this community of disabled Americans, of watching America respond, watching the military respond physically to my presence.
Army Major Dennis D.J. Skelton has garnered national attention since November 6, 2004, when he was seriously injured by an RPG during a fight against enemy combatants. His condition was so severe, some news media called him America's most wounded soldier.
One of the soldiers took a spent .50 cal shell through the neck, and that was my trach, that was my airway. The reason being is because I had no mouth. Most of my eye was an exit wound, not an entry wound, so I have a very small scar here, which we assume was shrapnel that came in. And it went out the eye and it destroyed everything in its path. So the upper jaw, the upper palate, the roof of the mouth, all of that is just gone. My left arm was destroyed pretty acutely. My left hand was intact, but everything was destroyed from the hand to the elbow. My ammunition belt got really hot, especially when the RPG went off. And so a lot of my ammunition started cooking off. Right, so if you want to know what a magazine looks like, I had a complete magazine go in and out. And then a bunch of AK-47 rounds that went through different various parts.
You describe these incredible events in a very nonchalant manner that makes it difficult to catch the import of it sometimes. But you mentioned you were in Walter Reed for something like, you mentioned years, not months.
I was an inpatient for about a year, just under a year, on and off. And then essentially I was an outpatient for about 6 years. So I did about 70 surgeries at Walter Reed and Bethesda from 2004 to 2010.
What was that number again?
About 70 surgeries.
70 surgeries.
And then with that, all the physical therapies and all the other care that goes with that. And there was no shortage of doctors that would tell me everything I would never do the rest of my life. You'll never walk again, you'll never run again, you'll never climb again, you'll never ski again. You never do all these things that define myself and my happiness and my quality of life. So that was hard for me to accept, but at the same time, I had these real issues of, okay, how am I gonna write? How am I gonna speak? How am I gonna walk? And had to go all the way back to childhood at a time that I couldn't remember learning how to do these things.
But with time, surgery, and emotional support, Skelton did recover. And as he rebuilt himself, he noticed the military medical system was lacking in certain ways for soldiers and their families. For example, when his parents came to see him at Walter Reed, they faced armed guards demanding official documentation. These experiences led Skelton to write Our Hero Handbook, a comprehensive guide to assist families in understanding and navigating the military medical system. The book would be the first step in Skelton's efforts to change policy regarding injured soldiers. And his dedication to this cause gained attention in the Pentagon. Skelton served as a military advisor to then Deputy Secretary of Defense Gordon England on Veterans Affairs and Care for Wounded Service Members. And he served as a special assistant to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, seeing after veterans transition issues, wounded warrior policy, and improving services to military families.
My work and thoughts had kind of gravitated away from wounded warriors into this larger picture of veteran transition, and we were starting to see a rise in America in veteran homelessness from our generation and unemployment and what Admiral Mullen calls this sea of goodwill. We come back from war and we have this amazing nation that now embraces us, which wasn't the case in Vietnam. And there's no shortage of support. But how do you navigate it? Right. And the tens of thousands of nonprofits out there that now provide some service to veterans and wounded warriors. That's a lot of business cards. And when you're sitting in a hospital and everybody swings by and gives you a business card, and then you can't remember who's what, and then people say, hey, I'll help you out. And they say that because they mean well. Right. But at the end of the day, a lot of offerings of support, they don't necessarily have a capability. So we started, that had a negative effect in the wounded warrior community. Sure. And I saw that bleeding over to the veteran. Americans wanted to help, but at the end of the day, in what capacity and how do we help our veterans navigate that so they can find education, employment, healthcare, quality of life things.
Skelton has also worked with private organizations, such as the Center for a New American Security and the Wounded Warrior Foundation, to assist soldiers in post-traumatic recovery.
Just because of the fact that they lost a limb or they may be blind, they still have their heart, they still have their intellect, they still have their will, and that's something that we really needed to retain in the U.S. military.
This is Skelton in May 2010, taking part in Operation Proper Exit, where veterans returned to Iraq in an effort to find closure.
I wanted to help the Army evolve to the point where it's no longer a weapon system that's the most important feature, but it's us as human beings, as warriors, that are the most valuable weapon that we have. And we need our policies and our command structures need to reflect that. It doesn't matter if you lost your limbs, it doesn't matter how bad you're wounded. If you want to do something in life, go do it. Don't let any policy or regulation prevent you from following whatever dream yours.
In 2011, Skelton did something many thought impossible for seriously wounded soldiers. He deployed to Afghanistan and took command of a unit.
I just remember when I left Washington, D.C., I was told that I probably would never go back into a command position. I led some of those discussions in high policy committees in the Pentagon, and I didn't necessarily disagree with. Right? If we're going to ask Americans to give their sons and daughters, we probably need to provide the most physically and mentally sound leaders to do that. And the reality was I was not 100% in either front, and I never would be. Right? I'd always be acting at a deficit. And one thing led to another. When I showed up, and there was a dire need for commanders, and an opportunity arose for me to assume command of a cavalry unit in the 2nd Cavalry Regiment, and it just so happened to be the exact same company that I was a platoon when I got injured. None of that was by design. I showed up, I assumed command, and immediately went down to Panjwai, and which is one of the handful of Taliban holdouts along the Pakistani border up the Tarnak, and stood there for the next 6 months.
How was that experience getting back in a striker unit?
You know, my only
war zone?
You know, my only experience was the Second Battle of Fallujah, and that was my normal. So going back into another not as hostile but more sustained hostile environment was natural. Going back into the infantry was personally for me to close a chapter, and I needed that to move forward with my recovery. To be able to have that reunion, to be able to bring soldiers back was very powerful for me. I didn't have that opportunity as a platoon leader. And you know, I don't dwell on it negatively, but you know, there is that sense that you abandon your soldiers in the battlefield. And so I was, that chapter, coming back to Germany, redeployment, all of that was amazing for me in my recovery, not so good for the organization that I served in. So I'm now just DJ that was once wounded a decade ago.
He is near completing his graduate studies in National Security Affairs at the Naval Postgraduate School. He founded Paradox Sports, his own nonprofit to help the personal growth of disabled citizens, and he and his wife recently welcomed their first child to the world. But of course, one particular thing hasn't changed.
I thoroughly enjoy helping ensure that our wounded warriors and our veterans and their families that need help and need assistance know where to go, that are given every opportunity to get access to resources at the right time in the right place in the right way that is good for them. And we have a lot of work to do in that. We're making progress, but we do have a lot of work to do.